I have told this story maybe 400 times now, to my clutch brothers, to strangers in the drinking halls of Asan Reach, to a young cadet once who did not believe me and then, at the end, would not meet my eyes. I tell it because I was there, because I saw it with my own two eyes, and my eyes are the sort that do not blink often, so I miss very little. My name does not matter for the story. I am Vel. I am of the Ithran people, small, thin, gray-skinned, with the long fingers that make us good at fixing things and bad at fighting. On the station of Having Deep, I fixed the air scrubbers on the lower ring. That was my whole life back then. Fix the scrubbers, eat my ration, sleep in a bunk narrower than my own arm span. Wake up, fix the scrubbers again. I was nobody. I want you to understand that first, because the story is not about me. The story is about a human woman and a Verthek captain who made the worst decision of his very long and very violent life. Let me start at the beginning, or close to it. Having Deep was a neutral station. You know the kind. A great rusting ring of a thing, hung out at the edge of the Corinth systems where nobody's government reached and everybody's money did. Traders came. Smugglers came. Broken people came, the ones who could not go home. It smelled of oil and cooked protein and the sweat of 40 different species who did not agree on much except that they were all hungry. I remember the day it started because the ambient temperature had dropped 2 degrees in the market ring and nobody had told me why. And a dropped temperature meant a scrubber fault. And a scrubber fault meant I would be crawling through a duct on my rest cycle. So I was already in a poor mood. The market ring was crowded that shift. Loud. There was a vendor 2 stalls down frying something in bright orange oil, and the smell of it hung thick. A group of Sethari children, those bird-bone things with the singing voices, were chasing each other between the stalls while their mothers pretended not to see. Somewhere a music box played the same 6 notes over and over. Ordinary. It was all so ordinary. And then the Verthek came. You could feel them before you saw them. That is the truth. The Verthek are apex predators from a world that ate its own weak ones for 100,000 generations, and something in the rest of us, the prey-shaped species, the small ones like me, something old in our blood knows to go still when one walks by. The market noise did not stop exactly. It just lowered, like everyone had taken a breath at the same time and forgotten to let it out. There were 6 of them, big, twice my height and 4 times my weight, with that dark plated skin that swallowed the light and those forward-facing eyes and the double row of teeth that showed even when their mouths were closed. They wore the gray harness of a private crew, not a fleet. Mercenaries then, or worse. At the front of them walked the captain. I did not know his name yet. Later I would learn it, Captain Drommel Eschik, of the raidership Hollow Tongue, a name spoken in a certain kind of whisper across 9 systems. But that shift, I only knew that he was the biggest of the 6, and the stillest, and that the small chain of trophies at his belt was made of teeth that had not come from any Verthek mouth. He was hunting. You could see it, not for food, for sport or for money, which for his kind was often the same thing. He moved through the market slow, turning his great head this way and that, and where his eyes fell, people found reasons to be elsewhere. His eyes fell on the woman near the water seller's stall. I had noticed her earlier, if I am honest, before any of this, because she was human, and humans were still rare that far out. There were maybe a dozen on the whole station in those days. This one stood by the water cellar with a battered pack at her feet and a cup in her hand, drinking slow, watching the crowd the way you watch a crowd when you have learned the hard way that crowds can turn. She was not large, that is important. Understand it now so you understand everything after. She was smaller than the Verthek by a great deal, most things are, and even for a human she was not tall. Dark hair cut short and practical. A worn coat the color of old iron, a face that had seen weather and worse. She could have been anyone, a trader down on her luck, a courier, a refugee. There was nothing about her that said soldier, nothing that said warrior. That was the thing that fooled the captain, and I do not fully blame him for being fooled because it fooled me too. Later I learned her name, Kessa Vance. And I learned what she had been before having deep, and by then it made a cold kind of sense. But that shift I only saw a small, tired human drinking water, and a great predator turning toward her, and the space between them shrinking one slow step at a time. She saw him coming, I want that on the record. She saw him, I watched her eyes flick up, mark him, mark the six behind him, mark the exits, all in less time than it takes me to say it, and then she went back to her water. She did not run. She did not shrink. She just waited, calm as still water, and something about that calm should have warned him. It did not. He stopped in front of her, close, too close, that deliberate insult of closeness that predators use, standing near enough that his shadow fell over her whole body and the heat of him must have washed across her face. The six spread out behind him in a loose crescent, boxing her against the stall. The market had gone properly quiet now. Even the frying vendor had stopped his frying. The Sethari children had been snatched up and carried away. Everyone was watching and everyone was pretending not to, which is the most watching a crowd can do. The captain spoke. His voice was the sound of something heavy being dragged over gravel. "You are far from your kennel, little human." She looked up at him. She had to tip her whole head back to do it. And she said, "I remember it exactly, because of what came after," she said, in a voice that was almost bored. "Just passing through." That was all, just passing through, like he was a delay at a customs gate. I saw the captain's head tilt. That small predator movement, the recalibration, the moment when the prey does not behave the way prey is supposed to behave. For a heartbeat I thought, good, maybe he will be curious, maybe curiosity will save her. Predators can be lazy when they are not hungry. But he was hungry, not for meat, for the other thing, for the fear. And she was not giving it to him, and that offended him more than any insult could have. He reached out one great clawed hand and slow, so the whole market could see, he closed it around the strap of her pack where it sat at her feet, and he lifted it, dangled it, her worldly goods swinging from one claw. "Everything you carry," he said, "belongs to me now, your goods, your coat, your teeth if I want them." The trophy chain at his belt clicked as he shifted his weight. "This is a toll, little human. You did not pay it, so I will take it from your body, slowly, where everyone can watch." He leaned down and his voice dropped to something almost gentle, which was the most frightening thing I had heard in my life. "You will beg. They always beg. And then—" She smiled. I need to tell you about the smile. I have thought about it for years. I have tried to describe it to people and I always fail, because it was not a happy smile and it was not an angry smile. It was worse than both. It was the smile of someone who has just been handed something they had almost given up hopping for. It was relief. That is the closest I can get. She smiled the way a person smiles when a long, hard wait is finally over. When the thing they have been dreading turns out to be a thing they know exactly how to do. And she said, still soft, still almost kind, "You won't like what happens next." The captain laughed. Of course he laughed. The whole crescent of Verthek laughed, that grinding chorus, teeth and gravel. Because what was she? A small soft thing with no armor and no visible weapon, boxed in by 6 killers, deep inside a station where her kind had no fleet and no friends and no law to call on. What could she possibly do? I will tell you what she did. She set down her water cup, carefully, on the edge of the stall. She did not spill a drop, and I remember thinking that was strange, that in a moment like that she cared about the cup, and only later did I understand that she was not being careful with the cup. She was being unhurried on purpose. She was showing him that she had time, that she was in no rush at all. Then she reached up, not fast, not a lunge, nothing that would trigger the predator reflex, and she took hold of the pack strap that hung from his claw, and instead of pulling it away, she stepped in toward him. Toward the danger, into the reach of 6 creatures who could have torn her in half. And the captain, confused, let her. That was his second mistake. His first was choosing her at all. What happened after happened very fast, and I have had to slow it down in my memory over the years to understand it, the way you slow a recording to catch a single frame. She did not attack the captain. That is the part people always get wrong when I tell it. They expect her to strike the big one, the leader, the obvious threat. She did not. She went for the one on his left, the nearest of the crescent, half turned to laugh at his captain's joke, his weapon still holstered because why would he draw it for a soft little human? She was inside his guard before his laugh had finished. There was a sound, a wet, sharp, mechanical sound, and I saw a flash of gray metal in her hand that had not been there a moment before, drawn from somewhere in that worn iron coat, and the big Verthek folded at the knee like a building coming down. And she had his sidearm. She had taken it off his harness on the way down, in the same motion, before he had finished falling. I have replayed it 1,000 times and I still cannot see all the pieces. One breath she was small and unarmed and boxed in. The next breath one of them was on the deck, and she had his gun, and she had put the falling body between herself and the rest of the crescent, so that for one crucial second only two of them had a clear line to her, and those two she was already firing on. The market erupted, screaming, the rush of bodies away from the center. I did not run. I am not proud of it or ashamed of it. I simply could not move. I was pressed against the wall by the scrubber access panel, and I could not have moved if the whole station were burning. The Verthek are not slow. Do not let me give you that idea. They are terribly fast, faster than anything their size has a right to be, and they recovered in a heartbeat from the shock of it. Two of them drew and returned fire. The captain roared, a sound I felt in my chest, in my teeth, and came for her himself, all that terrible mass in motion. But here is the thing I understood only much later, watching it in my memory frame by frame. She was not fighting them. She was moving them. Every step she took for a reason. She never once stood still. She flowed between the stalls, using the water seller's cart, using a hanging rack of dried meat, using the fallen body of the first one she dropped, using all of it as cover, as barrier, as obstacle, so that the six of them could never all bring their weapons to bear at once. She kept turning the fight so that they were always in each other's way. A pack is only dangerous when it can surround you. She never let them surround her. She kept sliding out through the gaps, and every time she slid, one of them had to move to follow, and the moment they moved they crossed each other's lines. And in that half-second of confusion she would fire once, twice, precise, and another one would go down. She did not waste a single shot. I counted later, going over it. She fired 11 times in the whole of it. 11. And by the end, 5 Verthek were on the deck. 5. Against one small human with no armor, and a gun she had stolen 30 seconds ago. The captain was the last. Of course he was. She had saved him. Not by accident, I am certain of this. She had shaped the whole fight so that he would be last, so that he would have to stand there and watch his crew fall one by one, so that by the time it was only the two of them he would understand, fully and in his own gut, exactly the thing he had refused to understand at the start. That she was never the prey. They faced each other across the wrecked market. The music box was still playing its 6 notes somewhere, absurd, tinny, going on and on as if nothing had happened. Smoke drifted from the burning oil the frying vendor had abandoned. Somewhere behind me, a Sethari child was crying and being hushed. The captain had a weapon, a big one, a heavy sidearm up and leveled at her. She had the stolen pistol also up, also level, a standoff, and for a moment nobody breathed. He was bleeding. She had hit him at least once in the chaos, a dark seep along one plated shoulder. His breath came in that heavy grinding rasp, and his eyes, those forward-facing predator eyes, for the first time in what I would guess was a very long life, they held something that was not hunger and was not contempt. They held fear. "What are you?" he said, not a threat now, a real question, almost a plea. And she answered him. And this is the part I tell the loudest every time, because it is the part I want people to remember. "You called it a kennel," she said. Her voice had not risen the whole time, it did not rise now. Where I'm from, you think we're soft because we're small, because we bleed easy, because one of you could break one of us." She took a step toward him and he took a step back, and I saw the shame of that step move through him like a current. "But you never asked why the small soft thing was walking around out here alone, with no fleet, no guards, no one to protect her." Another step. Another retreat. "You never asked why she wasn't afraid." She stopped. "I've killed better than you," she said, "for less than you just did." He fired. I want to be honest, he did not simply give up. He was a predator to the last, and he fired one desperate shot, and the market flinched as one. She was not where the shot went. She had already moved that same unhurried-looking flow that was somehow faster than everything around it, and the bolt cracked into the deck plate where she had been standing. And then she fired once, and the captain of the hollow tongue, Drommel Eschik, terror of 9 systems, went down onto his knees, and then onto his side, and the trophy chain of teeth that were not his own spilled across the deck and scattered. And it was over. The whole thing, start to finish, had taken less time than it takes me to walk from the scrubber access to the ration line. I timed it once, out of a strange need to know. Under a minute. Everything I have described to you happened in under a minute. The market was silent except for the music box and the crying child, and the small sounds a station makes when it thinks no one is listening. Kessa Vance stood in the middle of it, breathing hard now, the only sign the whole thing had cost her anything. She looked down at the captain for a long moment. Then she bent, and I thought she might take a trophy of her own, and I would not have blamed her, but she did not. She picked up her battered pack from where it had fallen. She checked the strap. She shouldered it. Then she walked to the water seller's stall, and she picked up her cup, the one she had set down so carefully, and she finished the water in it. Every drop. Set the empty cup back down. And she looked around at all of us, the whole frozen crowd of us pressed against the walls, and she said, to no one and to everyone, "Sorry about the mess." Then she walked out of the market ring, and nobody moved to stop her, and nobody has stopped her since, and I have never seen her again. They came to clean it up eventually. Station security, who had been very carefully somewhere else for the whole of it. They took the bodies. They took the captain. They asked questions and nobody had answers, or nobody would give them. Having Deep is that kind of place. And in the shifts after, the story spread. My version and 40 others. Every teller changed a detail. In some versions there were 8 Verthek, not 6. In some she used a blade, not a stolen gun. In one, which I hate, she said something clever and cruel over each body as it fell, which she did not do. She never gloated. She never wasted a breath, and I think stripping the gloating out is the most important thing a teller can do, because it was the not gloating that made her terrible. But the shape of it stayed the same, station to station, telling to telling. A predator captain who threatened a small human, a human who smiled, a warning nobody heeded. And then the thing itself, the fast and awful poetry of it, 6 against 1 and 1 walked away. I have thought a great deal in the years since about why it stays with me. I have seen violence before. I am not so soft as my people are said to be. Death is not new to me. I think it is this. The captain looked at her and saw something small. He saw the shape of her, the size, the softness, the aloneness, and he decided he knew what she was. He was so sure. His whole species is so sure always that they are the top of everything, that the shape of a thing tells you the truth of a thing. And she stood there and let him be sure. That is what I keep coming back to. She let him. She drank her water and looked bored and gave him every chance in the galaxy to walk away, and he could not. Because he could not imagine that the small soft thing in front of him was anything other than what she looked like. Humans, I have come to think, are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy for exactly this reason. Not because they are so strong. They are not one for one. Not because their weapons are so terrible. Everyone's weapons are terrible. It is because they do not look like what they are. They come out into the dark, small and soft and alone, and they wear their history on the inside where you cannot see it. And by the time you learn what they have survived to arrive in front of you, It is already too late to unlearn it. The captain learned it too late. 5 of his crew learned it too late. And I, hiding by a scrubber panel with my long, useless fingers over my mouth, learned it in time to spend the rest of my life telling everyone else. I saw her one more time. I lied a moment ago, or I misremembered, and I will correct it because I want this story to be true. Not in person, on a screen. A bounty notice months later drifting through the station feeds. Her face, that weathered face, those calm eyes under a string of names and numbers and warnings from 3 different governments. The reward was enormous. The list of what she was wanted for was longer than my arm. I did not read all of it. I did not want to. At the bottom, under all of it, in the small print that lists last known behaviors for the hunters who would go after her, someone had written a single line. A warning to the bounty crews. I have it memorized. It said, do not engage on the assumption of a soft target. Every crew that has made this assumption is dead. I looked at that for a long time, and then I closed the feed and I went back down to the lower ring and I fixed the air scrubbers because that was my whole life. Fix the scrubbers, eat my ration, sleep, wake, fix them again. But sometimes on the quiet shifts, when the market is loud above me and I can hear 40 species being hungry all at once, I think about her cup, the water cup, how she set it down so carefully at the start, and how she came back for it at the end and finished it and walked away. And I think, that is the whole thing right there. That is humans entire. They finish their water. Even in the middle of the worst of it, even standing over the bodies of things that wanted to wear their teeth on a chain, they are calm enough and unhurried enough and certain enough of themselves to finish their water first. The captain never understood that. He looked at her and saw prey. She looked at him and saw a delay. And she was right. She was only ever just passing through. I told you I never saw her again. That was true when I said it. It stopped being true 4 months later. Let me back up. Because between the market ring and the day she came back, a great deal happened on Having Deep, and none of it made sense unless you understood what she had left behind her when she walked out of that market. A body count and a name. The name spread faster than the bodies could cool. You have to understand what a thing like that does to a station like ours. Having Deep ran on a quiet agreement. Nobody said it out loud, but everybody knew it. The strong took from the weak, and the weak did not fight back, and in exchange the strong did not burn the whole place down. It was ugly. It was also the reason any of us small ones stayed alive out there at the edge of nowhere. You paid the toll. You kept your head down. You lived. And then one small human woman drank her water and broke 6 killers apart on the market deck. And every weak thing on that station stood a little straighter for a while. And every strong thing got very, very nervous. Because if she could do it, if the shape of a thing did not tell you the truth of a thing, then the quiet agreement was a lie, and everybody had been living inside a lie, and nobody knew what the world was anymore. The Verthek who ran the dock levels tripled their patrols. A Koresh slaver who had operated out of the far ring for years packed up and left inside a week, and nobody knew why, except I think I knew why. I think he had looked at what was left of Captain Eschik and done some arithmetic about his own soft places. For a little while the tolls stopped. Just stopped. The vendors in the market kept their goods. The couriers walked the halls without paying. It was a strange, thin sort of freedom, and it did not last. But while it lasted, it was the closest thing to hope I had felt in years. Then the bounty crews started coming. The reward on her head was enormous, I told you that. What I did not tell you is what an enormous reward does. It does not bring one hunter. It brings all of them. It brings the good ones and the desperate ones and the stupid ones, and they come from everywhere, and they do not care what they break on the way. The first crew came about 6 weeks after the market. A team of Dreven, those tall, pale things with the extra joints in their arms, cold and clever and organized. 5 of them professional bounty runners, the kind who did this for a living and were good at it. They came onto the station quiet, asked their quiet questions, spread their quiet money around. They wanted to know where the human had gone. Nobody knew. That was the truth. She had walked out of the market and off the station and into the dark and left no wake behind her. But the Dreven did not believe that nobody knew, because in their experience somebody always knew, and so they started applying pressure to find the somebody. They came to the lower ring. To me. I remember it because I had been dreading it since the first day I heard hunters were on the station. I knew everyone knew that I had been in the market. Word gets around. The scrubber fixer who saw the whole thing and would not shut up about it, that was me. I had made myself into a landmark. Two of them cornered me by the scrubber access on the graveyard shift when the ring was empty and cold. They did not touch me. They did not need to. One of them just stood very close, that old trick, the closeness, and asked me in flat trade speak to tell them everything I had seen, so I did. I told them the whole thing. Why not? It was not a secret, and there was nothing in it that could lead them to her because I did not know where she was. I told them about the 6 Verthek and the water cup and the smile and the warning. I told it plain, no flourishes, just the way it happened. And when I finished, the taller of the two was quiet for a long moment. Then it said something I have never forgotten. It said, "You are telling us to be afraid." And I realized standing there that I was. That somewhere in the telling I had stopped answering their question and started giving them a warning of my own. Do not do this, I was saying, without saying it. Do not go after her. You will not like what happens next. They did not listen. Of course they did not. Nobody ever listens. That is the whole shape of the story from the captain onward. They thanked me, the Dreven are polite in their cold way, and they left. And they took their 5 strong professional crew and their quiet money and their good equipment, and they went out into the dark after her. 4 of them came back. I heard about it in pieces. A dock worker who unloaded their ship when it limped home. A medic on the 2nd ring who patched up what was left of them. The story I assembled from the pieces went like this: they found her. That much they managed. They tracked her to a fuel depot 2 jumps out, a lonely little rock of a place, and they set up their ambush the way professionals do, careful and patient, all 5 positions covered, all angles closed. And she walked into it, and she knew it was there. Of course she knew. She had probably known for 2 jumps that she was being followed, and she let them spring it. The same as the captain. She let them be sure. I do not know the details of the fight. The survivors would not speak of it, and I do not blame them. But the shape of it was the same shape as the market. 5 hunters, 1 human. And she took them apart not by being stronger than them, because she was not, but by understanding them better than they understood her. She knew they would trust their positions, so she made their positions into traps. She knew they would communicate, so she cut their communication first and let the silence do half her work, each of them alone and blind and certain the others were still there. By the time they understood the plan had failed, the plan had already killed most of them. The one that came back to having deep, the leader, the tall one who had told me I was telling them to be afraid, was not the same creature that had left. Something had gone out of it. It sat in the 2nd-ring medbay with its clever cold eyes fixed on nothing, and when people asked what had happened, it said only one thing, over and over. In that flat trade speak, it said, "She wasn't hunting us back, that was the worst part. We were nothing to her, we were weather, we were weather. I have thought about that as much as I have thought about the water cup. To the hunters, catching her was the great work of their lives. To her they were weather, a storm you wait out, an inconvenience between one place and the next, just passing through. More crews came after the Dreven. They kept coming. The reward was too large. It drew them the way a wound draws scavengers. And one by one the dark took them, and less of each crew came back, until the crews stopped coming back at all. And in the middle of all this, I finally learned who she was. It came from an unlikely place. There was an old Ithran woman on the station, one of my own people, who had been out in the black far longer than me and knew things she should not have known. Her name was Mare, and she ran a tea stall on the 3rd ring, and she had ears everywhere. One slow shift she waved me over, and without me asking, she told me the story of Kessa Vance. I will tell it to you the way she told it to me, and you may believe as much of it as you like. I believe most of it. Kessa Vance had been a soldier. Not a mercenary, a real soldier once in a real war. One of humanity's endless, brutal little wars that they fight among themselves out on their frontier where the rest of the galaxy does not look. She had been part of something. A unit. Mare did not know the name of it or would not say it, but she said it was the kind of unit that got sent to the places nobody came back from, and did the things nobody would speak of, and Kessa had done them, and she had come back, and that was the first strange thing about her, that she had come back at all. The unit was betrayed. That was the heart of it. Mare was vague on how, on by whom, on why. The truth of these things is always buried under 100 lies. But the shape of it was that someone Kessa had trusted, someone above her, had sold the unit to fill their own pockets, and the unit had been sent into a place it could not survive, and it had not survived. All of them died, all of them but her, and she had walked out of that place, small and soft and alone, wearing her history on the inside, and she had gone looking for the one who sold them. And that, Mare said, was why she was out here at the edge of everything, drifting from station to station, drinking her water, waiting. She was hunting. She had been hunting for years. Not the Verthek captain, he was nothing, an accident, a delay. She was hunting the thing that had killed her people, and it had run out here into the dark to hide, and she had followed it, patient as gravity, and she would find it, and when she found it, when she finds it, Mare said, and she poured me more tea, and her old gray hands did not shake. The galaxy will feel it, even out here, even us. I asked her how she knew all this. She smiled, not Kessa's smile, a smaller, sadder thing, and she said, because I have lived a long time and I have learned to listen for the quiet ones. The dangerous ones are always quiet. It is the loud ones you can ignore. Then she took my empty cup and she looked at it for a moment and she said, almost to herself, she finished her water in the market. You told everyone that part. Do you know why that part matters so much to you? I said I did not. Because, Mare said, a person who finishes their water is a person who is not afraid of dying. And a person who is not afraid of dying, small and soft and alone at the edge of the world, that is the most dangerous thing there has ever been. There is no toll you can charge them. There is nothing you can threaten to take. She has already lost everything. All that is left of her is the hunt. I did not have anything to say to that. I finished my tea. I did not want to leave any in the cup now. The day she came back, it was a nothing shift like the shift it had all started on. I was in the market ring again, not fixing scrubbers this time, just walking through, buying my ration, an ordinary gray nobody in an ordinary crowd. The market had healed over the way markets do. New vendors, the music box or one like it playing its little loop. The frying vendor was back, or a cousin of his, the orange oil bright and hot, and she was standing by the water seller's stall. I stopped dead. My whole chest went cold. It was her, the iron coat, the short dark hair, the calm. She had a cup in her hand and she was drinking slow and watching the crowd, exactly as she had 4 months before, and for one terrible moment I thought time had folded back on itself and it was all going to happen again. But it was not the same. Because this time, standing across the market from her, half hidden by a hanging rack of cured meat, was a single figure I did not recognize. Not a crew. One. A lean, scarred human man in good armor, with a soldier's stillness and a soldier's eyes, and those eyes were fixed on her and full of something I could not name. And I understood, the way you understand things in dreams, all at once and without being told. This was him. The one she had been hunting. The one who sold her unit. He had run out to the very edge of the galaxy to get away from her, and she had followed, patient as gravity, and now here they both were, in a nothing market on a nothing shift, and the whole thing had come down to this. He had found her first, or thought he had. He was going to do to her what the captain had tried to do, take her by surprise from behind while she looked small and soft and unaware. I wanted to shout, to warn her. My mouth would not work. It never works when it matters. I'm a coward with long useless fingers and a mouth that only tells stories after the danger is gone, but I need not have worried, because she was not unaware. She was never unaware. She set down her cup carefully, not a drop spilled, and my whole body went cold at the sight of it, and she turned, unhurried, to face the man across the market, and she smiled, that smile. The relief. The long wait finally over. The man went white. All his soldier's stillness cracked at once. Whatever he had thought this moment would be, it was not this, her already turned, already waiting, already smiling, because she had known he was there before he knew she was there, the same way she always knew. She said something to him. I was too far to hear it. But I did not need to hear it. I knew what it was. I had heard it 4 months before, and everyone on that station had heard the story of it 1,000 times since, and I would have bet my life it was the same 5 words. You won't like what happens next. I will not describe what happened after. Not because it was terrible, though it was, but because it was hers. It was the thing she had crossed the whole galaxy for, the last piece of a wound years in the healing, and it belongs to her and to her dead unit and to no one else. It is not a story for me to tell in a drinking hall for the price of a cup of ale. Some things a witness should have the decency to look away from. I will tell you only this. It did not take long. It never took long with her. And when it was over, she stood alone in the middle of the market with the crowd frozen against the walls, exactly as she had stood 4 months before, and she was breathing hard, which was still the only sign it had cost her anything. But this time there was something else. This time, when the breathing slowed, she did not look calm. She looked empty, hollow, like a held breath finally let go. Like a person who had been walking toward one door for so long that they did not know how to walk once they had gone through it. The hunt was over, and I understood, watching her, that the hunt had been the last thing holding her together, and now it was done, and she did not know what she was for any more. She walked to the water seller's stall. She picked up her cup. And she looked at it for a long time, longer than she looked at the dead man, longer than she looked at anything, and I thought of Mare's words, that a person who finishes their water is not afraid of dying, that all that was left of her was the hunt. And now the hunt was finished. For a moment I was truly afraid she would not drink it, that she would set the cup back down full and walk out into the dark, and simply stop, the way a machine stops when its one task is complete. But she drank it. She finished her water, every drop, the way she always had. And something in me unknotted so hard I nearly wept, standing there in the cured meat smell with my useless hands, because finishing the water meant she was still choosing to live. Even now, even with the hunt gone and nothing left to hold her up, she chose the small human thing, the water in the cup, the next breath, the next day. She did not know what she was for, but she was going to go and find out. She set the empty cup down. She looked around at all of us, the frozen crowd, and I was near enough this time that her eyes passed over me, and I will swear it to my dying shift, that she knew me, that she recognized the little gray scrubber fixer who had watched her 4 months before. Her mouth moved just slightly, not quite a smile, a softer thing. Then she shouldered her pack and she walked out of the market ring, and this time I did not tell myself I would never see her again. I did not know what I would or would not see. Nobody knows that. That is the whole terror and the whole gift of being alive out there at the edge of everything. I still fix the scrubbers. That is still my whole life. Fix them. Eat, sleep, wake, fix them again. But the station is different now, and I am different, and I want to tell you the difference before I stop, because it is the reason I have told you any of this at all. The quiet agreement is broken. It did not come back after she left. The tolls are gone. The strong still walk the dock levels, but they walk carefully now, and they do not lean down close to the small, soft things anymore, because every one of them has heard the story, and the story has changed how they see. They look at a small gray Ithran fixing a scrubber, or a lone human drinking water, or a tired courier with a battered pack, and they no longer let themselves be sure. The shape of a thing does not tell you the truth of a thing. She taught the whole station that in under a minute twice, and it will not unlearn it in my lifetime. The weak stand straighter. Some of them have started to fight back in small ways, and the small ways add up. Mare says the whole edge of the galaxy is changing, slow, station by station, wherever her story travels. I do not know if that is true. Mare says a lot of things, but I would like it to be true. And I think this is the thing I have come all this way to say. I think that is what humans are in the end. Not the strength, not the weapons. It is that they walk out into the dark, small and soft and alone, carrying their history on the inside, and they refuse, absolutely refuse, to be what their shape says they should be. And by doing it once in a market in under a minute, they teach everyone who watches that they do not have to be what their shape says either. She threatened no one. Remember that. In the whole of it, both times, she never once made a threat. She gave a warning. You won't like what happens next. That is not a threat. A threat is a thing you make when you want something. A warning is a thing you give when you are trying one last time to save someone from themselves. They never listened. The captain did not. The hunters did not. The man who sold her unit did not. But I did. I am the one who listened. I am the small gray coward by the scrubber panel who could not move and could not speak and could only watch and, afterward, tell. And maybe that is enough. Maybe the whole point of a warning is that somewhere in the frozen crowd there is one who hears it and carries it and gives it again. So here it is, for whoever is listening at the edge of whatever dark you are standing in. The small soft thing in the corner, drinking her water, watching the crowd, the one you are so sure about, you do not know what she has survived to arrive in front of you. You cannot see it. It is on the inside. Be careful who you decide is prey. You won't like what happens next.